I didn't know my life was going to split into a before and an after because of one sentence whispered in the dark. Not a scream, not a confession, a request. I woke up faster than any alarm clock could have done it because someone was sitting on the edge of my bed, breathing like they'd been running. I pushed myself upright and actually looked at my husband. Really looked. Ethan was still wearing yesterday's clothes, the same button-down he'd kissed my forehead in at 11 p.m. before I fell asleep. His hair was messy, like he'd been dragging his hands through it for hours. His eyes were bloodshot and swollen, and there were faint streaks on his cheeks, like he'd wiped tears away too many times and ran out of patience to do it gently. Ethan, my voice came out rough. Have you been awake all night? He didn't answer. He just stared at me with a kind of fear that didn't belong to the man I married. His gaze looked borrowed, haunted, unfamiliar, like someone had taken my husband and replaced him with a stranger wearing his face. My stomach tightened, slow and cold. What is happening? I asked again, sharper this time. Ethan, what did you do? His throat bobbed. He swallowed like it hurt. You're going to hate me by noon, he whispered. My heart stuttered. What? He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, fingers laced together so tightly his knuckles went pale. But I'm asking you, his voice cracked. Please don't look at your phone until then. I blinked, confused for half a second. Then my skin prickled, like my body understood danger before my brain could name it. Why would I? Just give me these few hours, he pleaded. Let me have these last few hours before everything falls apart. Before you know. Before it's all over. My pulse started pounding in my ears. Ethan, I said, slow, careful. What did you do? He stood up, wrapping his arms around himself like he was trying to physically hold his body together. Promise me, he said, please, don't look. Not until noon. Looking back now, I realize I should have grabbed my phone immediately. I should have demanded answers right then. But there was something in his face, something so broken and desperate that made my breath catch. And somehow I heard myself say it. Okay, I whispered. I won't look until noon. The relief that flooded across his face should have been my first real warning sign. Because it wasn't relief that I'd trusted him. It was relief that he'd bought time. And then he walked out of our bedroom and quietly closed the front door behind him, leaving me. I used to think trust was something you earned once and then got to keep. Like a wedding ring, like a mortgage approval, like a title on a deed. I know better now. Because that morning, alone in our bedroom, listening to the house settle around me, I realized something terrifying. Trust isn't a trophy. It's a daily decision. And for 10 years, I'd made that decision with Ethan without even thinking about it. My name is Avery Parker. I'm 34, a project manager for a mid-sized construction firm. The kind of job where your calendar runs your life and your inbox never stops breathing. I'm the woman who brings a travel mug to meetings, who color codes budgets, who remembers birthdays and sends thank you cards, who keeps spare chargers in her car because I hate being unprepared. People call me steady. Some say it like it's a compliment. Sometimes it's a warning. Ethan, my husband, was the opposite in the ways that felt charming when we were young. He was social, warm, the kind of man who could talk to anyone in a grocery store line and leave them smiling. He worked in marketing and he was good at it, good at storytelling, good at making people feel seen, good at persuading. When I first met him, I mistook that skill for honesty. We met at a friend's backyard birthday party 10 years ago, back when adulthood still felt like a game we were learning the rules to. I'd shown up late, hair still damp from a rushed shower, wearing a simple sundress that I'd hoped looked effortless, but probably just looked like effort. Ethan was at the grill, laughing too loudly, flipping burgers like he was hosting a cooking show. When I walked past him, he glanced up and smiled like he'd been waiting. Hey, he said, holding the tongs like a microphone. You're late. Hi to you too, I replied, raising an eyebrow. He grinned. I'm Ethan. I didn't ask, I said, and I remember how his eyes lit up, like I'd challenged him. That was the thing about Ethan. He liked a chase. He liked a story. He liked a reaction. And I, God help me, I liked how it felt to be the center of someone's attention. We started dating 3 weeks later. At first, it was easy, bright, full of late-night diners and Sunday mornings, and laughing in bed like we had all the time in the world. He'd bring me coffee at work. I'd help him rehearse presentations. We'd talk about the future like it was a place we were already walking toward. The first crack should have been how quickly his world became our world, not shared. Absorbed. His friends became our weekends. His work events became my calendar. His mother's opinions became background noise I was expected to tolerate politely. And I tolerated a lot. Because love makes you generous with your boundaries in the beginning. We got married after 3 years. Nothing extravagant, no ballroom, no designer gown, just an outdoor ceremony with string lights, a playlist we built together, and vows that felt like the truest thing I'd ever said out loud. Ethan cried when he saw me walk down the aisle. My mother squeezed my hand and whispered, "He adores you." And he did. At least, I believed he did. For a while, marriage felt like partnership. We saved for a house. We argued about paint colors. We bought furniture from IKEA and fought over instructions and made up with pizza on the living room floor. We took road trips and sang off key. We built a life out of small decisions that added up to something solid. But then came the one thing we couldn't build no matter how hard we tried: a baby. We tried for 5 years. 5 years of tracking apps, doctor appointments, hormone tests, conversations that started hopeful and ended quiet, friends announcing pregnancies over brunch while I smiled too wide and went to the bathroom to breathe. Ethan never blamed me. Not directly, but there were moments, small, sharp moments, when his silence felt like a weight, when the disappointment in his eyes flickered before he masked it with a joke, when his hugs started feeling like comfort and also like distance. Still, we kept going. 2 years ago, we made the decision together: adoption. It wasn't a consolation prize, not to me. It was a choice, a commitment. We filled out forms until my hand cramped. We did interviews and home studies, cleaned our house like we were being inspected by royalty, wrote letters to strangers trying to prove we were worthy of a child we hadn't met yet. Ethan was the one who insisted we include the line about Sunday dinners. "Our kids should grow up with traditions," he said, smiling softly, "even if we make them from scratch." And I loved him for that. I loved him for being hopeful when I was tired. I loved him for holding my hand when the waiting list stretched into months and then years. I thought we were building something sacred. What I didn't know, what I couldn't have imagined back then, was that while we were building our future together on paper, he was building a different future with someone else in secret. And the worst part? The signs were there. Not loud signs, not obvious ones, just tiny shifts that I explained away because it was easier than facing what they might mean. He started guarding his phone like it contained his heartbeat. He started working late more often. But his shirts didn't smell like office air. They smelled like outside, like car seats, like someone else's perfume that I told myself was just detergent from a coworker brushing past him. He got oddly irritable when I asked simple questions. "Who were you with? Why didn't you answer? Are you okay?" He'd sigh, rub his temples, make me feel like I was the problem for wanting basic information. And then he'd soften, kiss my forehead, call me Aves, and I'd fold. Because I wanted to believe my marriage was still what I thought it was. His best friend, Marcus Chin, was around the whole time. Marcus was part of our life like a permanent fixture. At barbecues, game nights, holiday dinners. He brought wine, told stories, laughed at Ethan's jokes like they were the funniest thing he'd ever heard. Marcus had a wife, Vanessa, who was quieter than him, polite, a little guarded, the kind of woman who watched more than she spoke. I liked Vanessa. Not in a best friend's way, in a she seems real way. But over the last year, she'd gotten distant. She stopped coming to group dinners as often. Marcus always had an excuse. She's tired. She's busy. She's not feeling social. And Ethan, my Ethan, never questioned it. He just kept smiling, kept moving, kept living. Until the morning he sat on the edge of our bed, with those haunted eyes and asked me for one last thing, a promise. Don't look at your phone until noon. And I, stupidly, loyally, gave it. Because I didn't know yet that by the time the clock hit 12, I wouldn't just be losing my marriage. I'd be losing the version of myself that believed I was safe in it. By 7:42 a.m., I knew something was wrong, in a way that had nothing to do with intuition and everything to do with the way the world was behaving around me. I had kept my promise. I hadn't touched my phone. It sat face down on the kitchen counter while I moved through my morning like an actress who hadn't been given the script. Shower, coffee, toast I didn't eat. I kept glancing at the black screen like it might start glowing on its own. At 7:42, the landline rang. No one calls the landline unless it's an emergency. I stared at it for a full ring before picking up. Hello? Avery. It was Julian, my younger brother. His voice was tight. Too tight. Hey, I said slowly. Why are you calling the house? Have you looked at your phone yet? My stomach dropped. No. A pause. Don't, he said, then immediately corrected himself. Actually, no. I can't tell you what to do. Just call me when you do, okay? Julian, I snapped, my voice sharper than I intended. What is going on? He exhaled hard, like he was trying not to say something. I'll come by, he muttered. Just call me. The line went dead. I stood there, receiver still in my hand, staring at nothing. My heart started beating faster, not panicked yet, just bracing. At 8:19, there was a knock at my front door. Julian. He never dropped by before work. He was obsessively punctual. Being early was practically a personality trait. He looked at me like I was fragile. Are you okay? He asked immediately. Why does everyone keep asking me that? His jaw tightened. You really haven't looked at your phone? I shook my head. Ethan asked me not to until noon. Julian's face darkened in a way I'd never seen before. That man is unbelievable. Watch it, I said automatically. My loyalty was still intact, still reflexive. Julian ran a hand through his hair. Avery, you shouldn't be alone today. I'm fine. You're not. We stood there in my doorway, the morning air cool between us. What did he do? I asked quietly. Julian looked like he was physically restraining himself. I can't be the one to tell you, he said finally. Just come stay at my place tonight. Tara already said we have the guest room ready. Ready for what? He didn't answer. He just hugged me, tight, protective, almost angry, and then left. That was when the fear stopped being abstract. By 9:05, my phone started vibrating. I hadn't touched it, but I could hear it buzzing against the granite counter in short, aggressive bursts. Text, text, text. I turned it face up but didn't unlock it. Notifications stacked on the screen like a tower. Melissa, 4, Mom, 2, unknown numbers, 12, Instagram, 99+, Facebook, 99+, email, 36. My pulse thudded in my ears. Whatever was waiting inside that screen was big, public, messy. At 9:47, my mother called the landline. My mother never calls before noon. She has yoga every weekday at 9. She's had yoga every weekday at 9 for 8 years without missing a single class. Avery, sweetheart. Her voice was thick. My throat tightened. Mom, what's happening? Your father and I are here for you, she said softly. Whatever you need, none of this is your fault. None of this is your fault. The phrase landed heavy. What did Ethan say? I whispered. A pause. You'll understand soon. She was crying when she hung up. I stood alone in my kitchen, surrounded by 10 years of shared life. The owl-shaped salt and pepper shakers Ethan had insisted were quirky. The framed photo of us at Glacier National Park, smiling like idiots. The coffee mug I gave him last Christmas that said, "World's okayest husband." Everything looked the same. But something had already broken. And the worst part? Somewhere deep down, I wasn't entirely shocked. Because the truth is, the past year hadn't felt steady. It had felt slippery. Ethan had been distracted long before this morning. He'd started guarding his phone like it contained classified information. If I walked into the room unexpectedly, he'd tilt the screen away just slightly, Not dramatic enough to accuse, but enough to notice. He'd laugh at texts and not explain why. He'd step outside to take calls. When I'd ask who it was, he'd shrug. Work? Always work. There were nights he'd say he was staying late at the office, but when he came home, his energy wasn't tired. It was charged, alive in a way that didn't include me, and I'd told myself stories. Because the alternative, that he was sharing himself with someone else, was too big to hold. Marcus had been around constantly during that time, more than usual, dropping by unannounced, inviting Ethan out for drinks to blow off steam. There were nights Ethan would come home smelling faintly of whiskey and something floral I couldn't place. Vanessa was there too, he'd say casually when I asked. But Vanessa had stopped making eye contact with me months ago. At the last barbecue, she'd hugged me a little too long, like she knew something. Like she was apologizing without words. And I, blind, trusting, loyal, had smiled and handed her a plate. The phone buzzed again. And again? It was 11:32 when I finally sat down at the kitchen table. I'd kept the promise for over 3 hours. 3 hours of dread. 3 hours of imagining everything from bankruptcy to illness to scandal. But nothing fit the way my body felt. This wasn't financial. This wasn't medical. This was personal. At 11:51 a.m., I picked up my phone. My hands were shaking. Close enough to noon, I told myself. Close enough to whatever line Ethan thought mattered. The screen lit up, and the world I thought I was living in began to fracture before I even unlocked it. The moment I unlocked my phone, it started vibrating in my hands like it was alive. Messages flooded in all at once, like they'd been waiting behind a dam that had finally broken. 178 texts, dozens of missed calls, hundreds of notifications. My stomach dropped so hard I had to grip the edge of the table to steady myself. The first message was from my sister Melissa. She never texts unless it matters. The preview showed only 4 words. "I'm so sorry, Avery." My fingers trembled as I opened it. It wasn't a text. It was a screenshot. A Facebook post written by my husband, posted at 5:12 a.m. The exact moment he'd been sitting on the edge of our bed, asking me not to look. My vision blurred for a second before the words came into focus. I need to come clean about something. My heart started pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. For the past year and a half, I've been having an affair with my wife's close friend, Vanessa Liu. The room tilted. Vanessa, Marcus's wife. The woman who hugged me too tightly. The woman who stopped meeting my eyes. I couldn't breathe. I kept reading because I couldn't stop. It started at my birthday party last April. I remembered that night. The cake, the candles, Ethan's arm around my waist. Vanessa had disappeared for 20 minutes. Marcus had joked she was on a phone call. According to the post, that's when it began. They ended up in the guest bedroom while I was downstairs, laughing with friends. It was supposed to be one time, a drunken mistake, but it wasn't. They kept seeing each other. Once a week at first, then twice, then almost every day. When he said he was working late, he was with her. When he said he was at the gym, he was with her. When he claimed he was helping Marcus through marriage problems, he was sleeping with Marcus's wife. They fell in love. Real love, he wrote. The kind he didn't know existed. My fingers went numb. 3 months ago, they started planning to leave their spouses. He was going to tell me. She was going to tell Marcus. They were going to move to Denver together. Start over. Start fresh. Then last week, everything fell apart. Vanessa told Marcus. Marcus kicked her out. And then came the part that made my knees buckle. Vanessa is 3 months pregnant, Marcus's baby. She and Ethan had been planning their future while she was secretly trying to save her marriage. Marcus chose to stay with his pregnant wife. Ethan was left alone. The post continued. Avery, if you're reading this, I'm so sorry. You didn't deserve this. You were a perfect wife. I destroyed our marriage for something that wasn't real. I'm posting this publicly because I don't want you to carry the shame of my choices. This is my fault, not yours. 389 comments, 214 shares. Everyone we knew had seen it. Everyone? My boss, my coworkers, our neighbors, my parents, Marcus, Vanessa, Julian. The entire universe now knew my husband had been cheating on me with my friend, and they knew before I did. I scrolled through the comments with shaking hands. Julian, I'm coming over. Melissa, you deserve better. My mom, come home, sweetheart. Vanessa, I didn't know until yesterday. I swear, I'm sorry. College friends calling him disgusting. Distant relatives praying for me. Coworkers offering support. The humiliation wasn't private. It wasn't contained. It was public. Viral. My marriage had detonated online, and I had been the last person to know. My heart felt like it was being crushed slowly from the inside. I called Ethan. Straight to voicemail. Again. Voicemail. On the third try, he answered. His voice was wrecked. Did you read it? Yes. Silence. Then softly. I meant what I said. Why did you post it publicly? I asked. My voice surprised me. It was steady, controlled. Why didn't you just tell me in person? I didn't want you to have to explain, he said, crying now. I didn't want people blaming you. I wanted them to know it was all me. How thoughtful, I whispered. Avery, I ruined everything. Where are you? My sister Rachel's place. I can't come home. I can't face you. You should have thought about that before you faced her. He flinched at the words. We need to talk about logistics, I said. The house, the accounts. Not today, he pleaded. Please, just give me a few days. A few days. He'd asked for a few hours this morning. Now he wanted days. I felt hollow. Like the center of me had been scooped out. Fine, I said. Avery. His voice broke completely. I do love you. I stared at the wall. Love. The words sounded like a foreign language. Love isn't what you did, I said quietly. Then I hung up and sat there. In the kitchen, we remodeled together. At the table where we'd filled out adoption paperwork. In the house we bought with 10 years of shared effort. Everything looked the same. But my marriage was gone. Publicly. Irrevocably. And the worst part? This wasn't even the full truth. I didn't know it yet. But this wasn't just an affair. This was about to become something far more devastating. I didn't scream. I didn't throw anything. I didn't collapse on the floor the way movies tell you heartbreak is supposed to look. I just sat there, still, cold. Like my body had decided the only way to survive was to conserve energy. The silence in the house felt different now. Heavy. Accusing. My phone kept vibrating on the table in front of me. Messages stacked on messages, sympathy layered over outrage. People were furious for me, but I didn't feel fury yet. I felt exposed, like someone had ripped the roof off my life and invited the entire world to look inside. I stood up slowly and walked to the living room. The framed photo from our 5th anniversary sat on the shelf. Ethan with his arm around me, both of us smiling at Glacier National Park, like nothing could touch us. I picked it up, studied his face. Was that smile real? Had he already been lying back then? Or did the lie come later? The questions were endless, sharp-edged, impossible to hold. My phone buzzed again. This time, it was a call. Vanessa. For a split second, I considered ignoring it. Then I answered. Avery? Her voice sounded hollow. Yes. I know this is probably the last person you want to hear from. I laughed once, short and humorless. You'd be surprised. Silence. Then she said, Can we meet? There's something you need to know. My chest tightened. Isn't the Facebook post enough? It's not the whole story. That made my skin go cold. What do you mean? Please, she said softly, just meet me downtown, the coffee shop on 5th. I hesitated. Every instinct screamed to stay home, to lock the door, to shut the world out. But another instinct, quieter, steadier, told me I needed the truth, even if it hurt more. Fine, I said. 1 hour. When I arrived, Vanessa was already there. She looked awful. Eyes swollen, skin pale, hair pulled back in a messy knot like she hadn't slept either. There was something different about her posture. Protective. Her hand rested low on her stomach. I froze. I had read the post. I knew she was pregnant, but seeing it, seeing the subtle curve beneath her sweater, made it real in a way words hadn't. "Thank you for coming," she said quietly as I slid into the booth across from her. "I didn't have anything better to do," I replied. My voice sounded detached, like it belonged to someone observing this from far away. Vanessa swallowed. "Marcus is at his parents' house. He's a mess." "Good." The word came out before I could soften it. She nodded slowly. "I get it." We sat in silence for a moment. The hum of espresso machines, the clink of ceramic cups, the normalcy of other people's lives moving forward while mine had just imploded. "There's something Ethan didn't include in that post," Vanessa said finally. My heart started racing again. "What?" "The affair started at your birthday party. That part's true." She paused. "But it didn't continue because they were in love." I felt the air shift. "What are you saying?" Vanessa's voice trembled slightly. "Ethan got me pregnant in May." My vision blurred. "What?" "He said they were careful. They weren't." I gripped the edge of the table. "But I miscarried in August," she continued softly. "I was 15 weeks. The world narrowed to the space between us." "He told me he was going to leave you," she said. "He convinced me we were building a future, that we'd raise the baby together." My chest felt tight, like someone was sitting on it. "And then?" "And then I lost the pregnancy. And after that, he started pulling away, saying maybe it was a sign, saying maybe we were making a mistake." A bitter sound escaped my throat. "So he wanted you when you were carrying his child, and when that disappeared," she nodded. "He came back to me, said we needed to fix our marriage." The betrayal layered itself, not just emotional. Strategic, cowardly. "And the baby now?" I asked, staring at her stomach. Vanessa exhaled slowly. "This one is Marcus's." Of course it was. Of course. "When I told Marcus I was pregnant, he panicked," she admitted. "He wanted me to terminate. Said he couldn't trap himself in a marriage he didn't want." I stared at her. "And you?" "I kept it. It's my baby." Her hand tightened protectively. "And Ethan?" I whispered. "When Marcus chose to stay with me and the baby, Ethan fell apart, completely. He told me if he couldn't have me, he'd make sure nobody walked away clean." A chill ran through me. "The post," I said slowly. She nodded. "He didn't confess out of guilt." My stomach dropped. "He did it because he was angry." Vanessa met my eyes. "He wanted revenge." I felt something shift inside me then. Not explosive. Not dramatic, just clarity. Ethan hadn't woken me up out of remorse. He hadn't posted that confession to protect me. He had detonated our marriage publicly because he couldn't stand losing control. And I had been collateral damage. I sat back slowly, letting the truth settle into my bones. I wasn't just betrayed. I had been used as a shield, used as a narrative, used as the innocent wife in a story he wrote to control the ending. Vanessa wiped her eyes. "There's more," she whispered. And I realized, with a strange calm washing over me, that whatever came next, I was no longer the woman who didn't want to look at her phone. I was ready to see everything, even if it destroyed what little was left. "There's more," Vanessa repeated, her voice barely above a whisper. I didn't know how there could possibly be more, but I nodded. "Tell me." She hesitated, like she was deciding whether this next part would break me completely. "A month ago," she said slowly, "Ethan asked Marcus to help him access your email account." The words didn't register at first. "My what?" "He said he thought you might be cheating," she continued, "that you'd been distant, that something felt off. He convinced Marcus to help him get into your password." I stared at her. I had never cheated, not emotionally, not physically, not even in fantasy. "I've done nothing wrong," I said quietly. "I know," Vanessa replied. "Marcus knows too, but Ethan was convinced. Or pretending to be. And when he got into your email," she continued carefully, "he found something he didn't expect." My breath caught. "What did he find?" Vanessa swallowed. "The messages from the adoption agency." The air left my lungs in a single, silent rush. No. I hadn't told Ethan yet. I'd been waiting for the right moment, waiting until after his big presentation at work next week, waiting until his stress levels were lower, waiting to surprise him with the one piece of news we had prayed for, cried for, fought for. 4 weeks ago, we'd been matched. A 22-year-old woman in Colorado, 8 months pregnant. She had chosen us. I had read the email 3 times before believing it was real. I had imagined Ethan's face when I told him. I had pictured him lifting me off the ground. Instead, he found out by hacking my account while planning to leave me. Vanessa's voice softened. Marcus said Ethan completely lost it when he read those emails. I felt dizzy. He realized that while he was planning a future with me, she continued, you were planning a future for both of you. You were giving him the one thing he'd always wanted, a baby, a family. The nursery we painted yellow 4 years ago. The empty room we closed and never opened again. He said it made him panic, Vanessa added. He said he felt trapped, like you were building something he didn't know if he deserved anymore. I laughed quietly. Trapped. He felt trapped by love, so he decided to destroy it first, I said. Vanessa didn't disagree. And when Marcus chose me and this baby, she glanced down at her stomach, Ethan snapped. He said if he couldn't have the life he imagined, no one would get to walk away clean. The Facebook post, the public confession, the humiliation. It wasn't guilt, it was retaliation. I sat back in the booth, staring at the coffee I hadn't touched. My husband didn't just cheat. He didn't just betray me privately. He hacked into my email. He discovered we'd finally been matched with a child. And instead of coming home, instead of confessing, instead of choosing honesty, he chose to blow up our lives online because he was angry, because he was losing control. Vanessa leaned forward slightly. I don't think he expected the reaction, she said. He thought people would sympathize with him, see him as the heartbroken man who made a mistake. I thought about the comments, the outrage, the support flooding toward me. He miscalculated, I whispered. She nodded. He thought he was controlling the narrative, but he destroyed his own reputation instead. I felt something unfamiliar settle in my chest. Not rage, not devastation. Resolve. He tried to use the truth as a weapon, but the truth had landed differently than he intended. My phone buzzed again. A message from Ethan. Avery, I know you know about the adoption. We can still do this together. Please, let's not throw everything away. The audacity made my hands shake. He wanted to salvage the adoption, salvage the future after publicly detonating our marriage. Vanessa watched my expression change. He's reaching out? Yes. I stared at the message for a long moment. Then I typed back. We'll talk about logistics through lawyers. Not like this. I hit send. It felt like stepping across a line I could never uncross. Vanessa exhaled. I'm sorry, Avery, for my part in this, for all of it. I looked at her, really looked at her. She wasn't my enemy. You were lied to too, I said quietly. She nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. We sat there for a moment, 2 women bound by the same man's selfishness. And then I stood. I have to make a call. To the lawyer? She asked. No, I said. To the adoption agency. Because if there was one thing Ethan didn't get to destroy, it was the future I had already started building. And for the first time since 5:12 a.m., I wasn't reacting. I was deciding. I didn't go home right away. I sat in my car outside the coffee shop for nearly 20 minutes, hands still on the steering wheel, engine off, world muted. I could feel it all now. Not the shock, not the numbness, the collapse. 10 years. 10 years of shared passwords and shared dreams and shared disappointments. 10 years of believing I was in a partnership. And now I knew that for at least a year and a half of it, I had been living inside a lie. My phone buzzed again. Ethan. I let it ring out. Then another message. Avery, please don't shut me out. We can fix this. The adoption, this is what we wanted. Don't take that away from us. The word made something inside me crack. There was no us when he was in a guest bedroom with Vanessa. There was no us when he hacked my email. There was no us when he typed out a public confession to punish someone else and humiliate me in the process. But now that he was alone, there was us again. I leaned forward, resting my forehead against the steering wheel, and finally, the tears came. Not dramatic sobs, just quiet, steady tears that soaked into my sleeves. I wasn't crying because he loved someone else. I wasn't even crying because the world knew. I was crying because I had trusted him with the softest parts of myself. The fertility appointments, the negative tests, the nights I lay awake wondering what was wrong with me. The nursery we painted yellow. The emails from the agency I reread in secret because I wanted to surprise him. He had seen those emails. He had read about the baby. And instead of running home to hold me, he chose revenge. That realization hurt more than the affair. I drove home, eventually. The house looked exactly the same doormat, the same porch light, the same door I'd walk through 1,000 times without fear. Inside, everything felt different. Empty. I walked down the hallway and stopped in front of the nursery. The door had been closed for 4 years. I hadn't opened it since we gave up on trying naturally. My hand hovered over the handle. Then I pushed it open. Yellow walls, an empty corner where a crib was supposed to be, a rocking chair we bought too early, too hopeful. I stepped inside and closed the door behind me. This was supposed to be the beginning of our family. Instead, it had become a museum of what could have been. I sat in the rocking chair and let myself feel it all. The betrayal, the humiliation, the grief, and beneath it, fear. What if Celeste decided she didn't want a single mother? What if she withdrew? What if Ethan's chaos cost me this, too? I pressed my palms into my eyes. For the first time that day, I felt small. Not strong, not steady. Small. I thought about the comments online. The pity. The public nature of my pain. I would have to go back to work eventually. Face coworkers who had read the post. Answer questions without answering them. Live in a town where everyone knew my husband chose another woman. I felt exposed, stripped down to bone. My phone buzzed again. Another message from Ethan. Avery, I'm coming home. We need to talk face to face. My pulse spiked. I typed back before I could overthink it. Don't. A moment later, he called. I answered. Avery, he said immediately, please don't do this alone. I know I messed up. I know I destroyed everything, but we can still salvage something. Salvage? I repeated softly. Yes, the adoption, our life. I'll go to therapy. I'll do whatever you need. You already did whatever you wanted, I said. There was silence on the other end. I was angry, he said finally. I felt like I was losing everything, so you made sure I did too. That's not fair. I laughed bitterly. Fair? Avery, I didn't think the post would blow up like that. That was the moment something inside me shifted. Not rage. Clarity. You didn't think, I said quietly. That's the problem. He exhaled shakily. I love you. The words landed flat. Love. I had spent years believing love was enough. Now I understood something different. Love without respect is chaos. Love without integrity is destruction. I can't trust you, I said simply. We can rebuild trust. You don't rebuild a house by setting it on fire first. He didn't respond, and in the silence, I felt the full weight of it. The marriage was over, not because of the post, not because of Vanessa, because the man I thought I married didn't exist. The man who sat on the edge of my bed this morning wasn't a partner. He was someone trying to control the narrative of his own collapse. I'm filing for divorce, I said. The words came out steady, certain. There was a long pause. Then his voice broke. So that's it? That's it. He started crying. For a second, I almost softened. 10 years is a long time to untangle from someone. But then I pictured the nursery, the emails, the public confession typed in cold anger. And I hardened. I'm not doing this out of revenge, I said. I'm doing it because I deserve peace. I hung up. Then I slid down to the floor of the nursery and cried until my chest hurt. This was the lowest point. Not the humiliation, not the betrayal. This quiet room with yellow walls. This realization that the future I thought I was walking toward had evaporated. But somewhere beneath the grief, a small, stubborn voice whispered, "You're still here." And as long as I was still here, there was still something left to build. The next morning, I woke up with swollen eyes and a strange, steady calm. The kind that only comes after you've cried so hard your body doesn't have anything left to drain. For the first time since 5:12 a.m. the day before, I wasn't reacting. I was thinking. I made coffee, sat at the kitchen table, opened my laptop, and I called the adoption agency. My caseworker's name was Patricia. She had walked us through 2 years of paperwork, interviews, home studies, background checks, reference letters, and emotional evaluations. She had seen me cry in her office more than once. She answered on the second ring. "Avery?" Her voice was gentle. "I'm guessing you saw the post." A pause. "Yes, I'm so sorry. I need to know something," I said, steady. "Can I continue the adoption alone?" Silence. Not shocked silence. Careful silence. "Yes," she said slowly. "You can, but it complicates things." "I don't care. The home study will need to be updated. The birth mother will need to be informed about the change. She specifically chose a 2-parent household." "I understand." Patricia hesitated. "Avery, are you sure you're in the right emotional space for this? You just experienced a major trauma. Becoming a single parent is overwhelming even under stable circumstances." I closed my eyes for a moment. She wasn't wrong, but something inside me felt clearer than it had in years. "This baby wasn't Ethan's dream," I said quietly. "It was mine too. I want to be a mother. That hasn't changed." Another pause. "I'll talk to Celeste," Patricia said, "but you need to prepare for the possibility that she may withdraw." "I know." After we hung up, I sat in silence. The house felt different now. Not haunted. Not broken. Just transitional. I walked back to the nursery, opened the closet, pulled out the box of adoption documents I had tucked away. Letters. Forms. The profile book we had built together. I flipped through it slowly. There we were, Ethan and me, smiling in photos, writing about Sunday dinners, family traditions, teaching a child how to build things and how to be kind. I stared at his face on the page because this wasn't about him anymore. That afternoon, my phone rang. "Patricia." "Avery," she said softly. "Celeste wants to speak with you." My heart jumped. "She does?" "Yes, she's shaken by everything. She chose stability, but she also said something interesting." "What?" "She said she reread your letters. She said your voice felt steady, honest. She wants to see if that's still true." We scheduled a video call for that evening. At 7 p.m., I sat in my office, alone this time, and waited. When Celeste appeared on screen, she looked younger than I remembered. Long brown hair, pulled back, a nervous hand resting protectively on her belly. "Hi," she said softly. "Hi, Celeste. Thank you for talking to me." We sat in awkward silence for a moment. Then she said it directly. "Your husband cheated." "Yes." "And you're divorcing him." "Yes." She swallowed. "I chose you and Ethan because you seemed solid, like you had built something real." "I thought we had," I admitted. Her eyes filled slightly. "I don't want my baby growing up in chaos." "Neither do I." She looked at me carefully. "You're alone now." "Yes." "Why should I trust you?" It was a fair question. I didn't rush to answer. "Because this wasn't a pitch." "Because I didn't choose chaos," I said finally. "I didn't choose betrayal. I didn't choose public humiliation. But I am choosing what happens next." She listened. "I can't promise perfection," I continued. "I can't promise I won't be overwhelmed or scared. But I can promise your baby will never wonder if she was wanted." Celeste's voice trembled. "I wanted 2 parents." "I understand." "And now you're one." "Yes." Silence stretched between us. Then she asked quietly, "Are you doing this to prove something to your husband?" The question pierced. "No," I said immediately. This isn't about him. It's about me. I've wanted to be a mother long before this marriage started falling apart. I won't let his choices erase that." Celeste wiped her eyes. "I'm scared," she whispered. "So am I admitted. And maybe that's the only honest place to start." She gave a small, shaky smile. "Can I think about it?" "Of course." After the call ended, I didn't move. The house was quiet, but for the first time since everything shattered, the quiet didn't feel suffocating. It felt open. An hour later, my phone buzzed. A text from Ethan. "You can't do this alone. You need me." I stared at the screen. Then I typed back. "I needed you to respect me. I needed you to protect our marriage. I needed you to choose us when it mattered." I paused. "I don't need you to become who I already am." I hit send. And in that moment, something irreversible happened. I stopped waiting for him to change and started trusting myself to move forward without him. 2 days later, Patricia called again. "Avery," she said, voice bright with emotion, "Celeste wants to move forward with you. As a single mother adoption." I sat down slowly. "She does?" "She said she heard strength in your voice. She said you sounded like someone who wouldn't disappear when things got hard." My throat tightened. "Next steps?" I asked. "We update the home study. You take the single parent parenting classes. Paperwork, background checks, final approvals." "How long?" 8 to 10 weeks if everything goes smoothly." 8 to 10 weeks. In 8 to 10 weeks, I could be holding my daughter, not because my marriage survived, but because I did. And that was the turning point. Not the divorce papers, not the public post, not even the betrayal. The turning point was realizing I was not defined by what he destroyed. I was defined by what I chose to build next. The divorce papers were filed on a Tuesday morning. I signed my name slowly, not angrily, not triumphantly, just clearly. Ethan didn't contest anything. No fight over the house, no argument over savings, no attempt to drag it out. For someone who had once tried to control the narrative of our collapse, he folded quietly when it came to legal reality. I heard through mutual friends that his workplace had called him in for a conduct review. The public confession hadn't just humiliated me, it had humiliated the company. There are consequences when you broadcast your affair with a colleague's spouse to hundreds of people. He lost clients. He lost credibility. Within a month, he lost his position. Marcus didn't fare better. Julian cut him off immediately. Other friends followed. People don't like being fooled. They like drama from a distance. They don't like realizing they were sitting at barbecues with a secret no one else knew. Vanessa and Marcus stayed together for the baby, not out of romance, out of responsibility. The last I heard, they moved to a smaller town 2 states over, somewhere quieter, somewhere no one recognized their names. I didn't wish them misery. I just stopped caring. Meanwhile, my world shifted in a different direction. The home study was updated. The parenting classes were exhausting and humbling. Single parent budgeting, infant CPR, legal seminars about guardianship. I sat in rooms filled with couples holding hands. I sat alone. But I never felt small again. My family stepped up in ways I hadn't fully understood they would. My mother started coming over twice a week to help reorganize the house. Julian built shelves in the nursery and installed a baby monitor system that could probably track satellites. Melissa organized a meal schedule for the first month after placement. They didn't pity me. They supported me. There's a difference. Ethan tried to reach out a few times. Long messages about regret, about therapy, about how he wasn't himself. One night, he showed up at the house while I was assembling the crib. "Avery, please," he said from the doorway. He looked smaller. Not physically, emotionally. "I've made an appointment with a counselor," he continued. "I want to fix this." I didn't yell. I didn't slam the door. I just looked at him steadily. "You didn't break a dish," I said quietly. "You detonated a foundation." He flinched. "I was angry," he repeated, like anger was a reasonable defense. "You were selfish." He had no response. "I'm not raising a child in a home where I'm constantly wondering what else is happening behind closed doors," I said. His voice broke. "I still love you." "I believe you think you do," I replied. And that was the most honest thing I could offer. The divorce was finalized 2 weeks later. He moved to Denver, the same city he once planned to run away to with Vanessa. I didn't watch him go. I didn't post anything online. I didn't need to. The fallout handled itself. 8 weeks after Celeste's call, my phone rang at 1:47 a.m. She's in labor, Patricia said. Everything else blurred. I drove 5 hours to Colorado on adrenaline and fear and something close to awe. When the nurse finally emerged with a pink bundle in her arms, I stopped breathing. Would you like to hold your daughter, Miss Parker? My daughter. The words cracked something open inside me. I took her carefully. She was warm. Real. Her tiny fingers curled instinctively around mine, and in that instant, the humiliation, the betrayal, the public spectacle, it all fell away. Not erased. Just irrelevant. Because this was real. This was mine. Celeste asked to see her before discharge. I carried the baby into her room. Celeste looked exhausted, pale, but peaceful. She's beautiful, she whispered, touching her daughter's tiny hand. Yes, I said softly. She is. Take care of her, Celeste said, tears sliding down her cheeks. Tell her I loved her enough to let her go. I promise, I replied. And I meant it. When I drove home with my daughter strapped into the back seat, I checked the rearview mirror every 30 seconds just to make sure she was still there. Still real. My family was waiting in the driveway when I pulled in. Pink balloons, a banner that read, "Welcome home, Harper." Everyone, I said carefully, lifting the car seat. This is Harper Grace. Harper for new beginnings. Grace for the mercy of second chances. My mother cried immediately. Julian grinned like he'd just won something bigger than himself. That night, after everyone left and the house was finally quiet, I sat in the nursery rocking her. The same yellow walls, but no longer empty. Her chest rose and fell steadily. Her tiny breaths filled the room. My phone buzzed. A message from Ethan. I heard about the baby. Congratulations. I hope she gives you the joy I couldn't. I stared at the screen. For a moment, I considered replying. Forgiveness. Closure. Something tidy. Instead, I locked the phone and set it aside, because this wasn't his story anymore. The fallout had landed where it needed to, and I was standing, not unscarred, but stronger. Part 10. Ending and Lesson. Female POV. 3 months later, I no longer felt like the woman who sat at her kitchen table watching her phone explode. I felt different, not hardened, not bitter. Clear. Harper was sleeping longer at night. Not perfectly. She still woke at 3 a.m. with demands that could rival a board meeting. But I learned how to function in fragments of rest. I learned how to change diapers in the dark, how to balance a bottle in one hand and answer emails with the other, how to soothe a cry that had no obvious cause. Single motherhood was harder than anything I had ever done, harder than the divorce, harder than the humiliation, harder than the grief, but it was honest. There were no secrets in the nursery, no locked screens, no half-truths, just small breaths and small hands, and a life that depended on me showing up every day. My family became the quiet architecture, holding everything steady. My mother came over twice a week to help and to teach. Julian installed security cameras that synced to my phone and pretended it was just because he liked gadgets. Melissa kept the freezer stocked and refused to let me say thank you. They didn't treat me like I was broken. They treated me like I was building something new. The divorce finalized quietly. Ethan signed the papers without protest. He didn't ask for money, didn't argue about assets. He moved to Denver, the same city he once planned to escape to. I didn't hate him. Hate requires energy, and I was using all mine to grow. Marcus and Vanessa had their baby boy. I ran into Vanessa once at the grocery store. Harper was in the cart, smiling at strangers like she didn't know what had come before her. Vanessa's son was strapped to her chest. We stood there in the cereal aisle for a moment. Two women who survived the same storm. She's beautiful, Vanessa said softly. So is he, I replied. There was no bitterness left between us, just understanding. Are you happy? She asked. I thought about it. About the sleepless nights. About the divorce papers. About the morning my world cracked open. Yes, I said finally. And it surprised me how true it felt. That night, after bathing Harper and reading her the same board book 3 times because she liked the pictures, I stood in her doorway and watched her sleep. The house was quiet, but not empty. I thought about that morning months ago. About Ethan sitting on the edge of the bed, about the promise not to look at my phone, about the flood of messages, about the humiliation of discovering my marriage had been shattered in public. And I realized something I never would have understood back then. The message that broke me freed me. If he hadn't posted that confession, if I had discovered the affair privately, if he had begged quietly and hidden it, I might have stayed. I might have tried to fix something that was rotten underneath. I might have raised a child in a home built on suspicion and resentment. Instead, everything detonated at once, painfully, publicly, irreversibly. And in the wreckage, I found clarity. I didn't lose my life. I lost an illusion. And sometimes losing an illusion is the only way to find truth. My phone buzzed one last time that night. A message from Ethan. I saw a picture of Harper online. You look truly happy. I'm glad you found that. I'm sorry I couldn't be the man you needed. I read it once, then I deleted it. Not out of anger, not out of revenge, but because my story no longer required his apology. I turned off the light and whispered to Harper, sometimes the worst moment leads you to the best one. She shifted in her sleep, tiny fingers curling around nothing and everything at once. I don't know what the future holds. I don't know how many challenges lie ahead. But I do know this. I will never again ignore the quiet warning signs to protect someone else's comfort. I will never again confuse love with loyalty to someone who disrespects me. And I will never let someone else's shame become my burden. Because I am not the woman who didn't look at her phone. I am the woman who looked. And chose herself anyway. And that choice gave me Harper. And that is enough.